By 5 o'clock, your code to this house stops working. Nolan said it in front of our 2 children, as calmly as if he were reminding me the recycling went out on Thursday. I was standing in the mudroom of our house outside Charlotte with a grocery bag cutting into my fingers. My 10-year-old son, Ben, had frozen halfway through unlacing his soccer cleats. My 7-year-old daughter, Lucy, was holding a papier-mâché solar system she had made at school. Behind Nolan stood Camille, my sister-in-law, wearing cream trousers and the camel coat I had seen hanging in our guest closet 3 nights earlier. Nolan slid a manila envelope across the counter. Sign the settlement, take the kids, and be gone before dinner Friday. Camille glanced at the family photographs on the wall and smiled as if she were already deciding which ones to remove. What neither of them knew was that, 90 minutes earlier, a probate judge in Philadelphia had signed the final documents transferring control of the Reed Property Trust to me. The trust held $24.6 million in liquid assets, a portfolio of medical office buildings, and, by a coincidence Nolan would soon find much less funny, the commercial loan on the building where Camille ran her design studio. It also owned the office park where Nolan's employer occupied 2 floors. I set the groceries down. Friday works, I said. Nolan's eyes narrowed. For 8 years, he had been able to frighten me with a bank password, a raised eyebrow, or a sentence that began with, "You don't understand money." My calm did not fit the version of me he had built. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I heard you." Camille laughed under her breath. Nolan tapped the envelope. "Then sign. I'll have my lawyer read it." His expression changed for less than 1 second. Then he smiled. "Grace, you don't have a lawyer." 3 weeks earlier, I would have believed him. 3 weeks earlier, I still measured the safety of my marriage by how successfully I could prevent Nolan from becoming angry. That Monday had begun with a $38 coffee charge. I was at the kitchen island before sunrise, answering emails for a nonprofit hospital foundation in Richmond while lunch boxes sat open beside my laptop. I had spent 12 years in corporate event production before Ben was born. After Lucy arrived, Nolan convinced me that freelance grant strategy and donor communications would be better for the family. At first, it was. I could work from home, travel only a few days each quarter, and still be the parent who knew which child needed poster board at 8 p.m. Then Nolan became vice president of finance at Braddock Development Group. His salary doubled. His confidence tripled. Somewhere along the way, he stopped calling my work flexible and started calling it little projects. He walked into the kitchen in a charcoal suit, glanced at my laptop, and held up his phone. "What is this?" I kept typing. "What is what?" $38.16 at Bloom Coffee. I looked at the screen. I met Jenna from the foundation there. I bought coffee and breakfast because she drove down from Greensboro. With the household card. Yes. Nolan leaned against the island. We talked about unnecessary spending. Ben came downstairs carrying 1 shin guard and no socks. Lucy followed in a bathrobe decorated with strawberries. I lowered my voice. "It was a work meeting." "Then expense it. My contract doesn't reimburse meals under $50. "Then maybe your contract isn't as valuable as you keep telling yourself." Ben stopped searching for his socks. Nolan noticed. His face changed immediately. "Morning, buddy. Big practice today?" Ben nodded. Nolan tousled his hair, kissed Lucy's forehead, and reached for the travel mug I had filled for him. He could switch from contempt to charm so quickly that for years I treated the first version as stress and the second as truth. At the door, he turned back. "Grace, freeze the card for today. I'm serious. We need groceries. There's food in the house. There's 0.5 carton of milk and ketchup. Then be creative." He left. Lucy waited until the garage door closed. "Is coffee expensive because it comes in a paper cup?" I stared at her. "No, sweetheart. Daddy sounded mad. Daddy worries about money." That answer had become my reflex. It protected Nolan from the children and left me carrying the shape of his behavior alone. The part one did not say was that Nolan had spent $4,800 the previous month on a golf weekend in Scottsdale and called it networking. He did not hide the receipt. He did not have to. By then, our marriage operated under a simple rule: his spending was strategy, mine required permission. Friday night, we hosted Braddock's annual donor dinner at a private club near Lake Norman. Nolan had volunteered our family because the chairman liked executives who understand hospitality. In practice, that meant I planned the menu, confirmed seating, found a last-minute florist, fixed the slideshow, and spent 2 hours in the kitchen helping a caterer whose van had broken down. Nolan arrived 20 minutes before the first guest and accepted compliments as though he had personally ironed every tablecloth. His older brother, Ethan, came with Camille. Ethan managed a commercial HVAC company and had the kind of kindness that often became silence when kindness required conflict. He hugged me, asked about the kids, and told Nolan the room looked incredible. Nolan clapped me on the shoulder. Grace likes having projects. Camille heard him. She always heard him. Her interior design firm, Vale & Finch, occupied a polished brick showroom in South End. She had built a respectable business, but every conversation with her turned into an audit of status. A restaurant was not good unless it was difficult to reserve. A handbag was not pretty unless someone recognized the logo. A friendship was not worth mentioning unless the friend owned something expensive. That night she wore a gold dress and entered the ballroom with Nolan's hand briefly at the small of her back. Briefly was still too long. I noticed because I had been noticing small things for months. A joke that ended when I entered a room. A Sunday morning text Nolan turned face down. Camille knowing which bourbon he had started drinking before I had told anyone. Each clue was small enough to dismiss. Together, they had begun to feel like a language I did not want to learn. During dinner, Braddock's chairman praised Nolan for closing a complicated redevelopment project in Raleigh. People applauded. Camille raised her glass. To the man who keeps everyone else afloat. Nolan smiled. You make it sound like a rescue operation. It practically is. Her eyes moved to me. Some people contribute spreadsheets. Some people contribute atmosphere. A few people laughed politely. I set down my fork. I spent most of today fixing the donor presentation. Camille tilted her head. That's what I mean. You're wonderful at making things feel nice. Ethan shifted in his chair. Camille. What? It's a compliment. Nolan looked at the chairman, not at me. Grace is great at the soft stuff. The words hit harder because of how casual he sounded. One of the women from legal gave me an embarrassed look. I waited for Nolan to correct himself. Instead, he took a drink. Camille smiled. If I had someone paying the mortgage and funding my life, I'd be good at the soft stuff too. Ethan whispered, enough. Nolan laughed. Don't scare her. She'll invoice us for emotional consulting. The table went quiet. I felt heat rise from my collarbone to my face. For years, I had told myself there was dignity in not making scenes. That night, silence suddenly felt less like dignity and more like consent. I looked at Nolan. Do you want to tell them what my consulting paid for last year? His smile tightened. Grace. Ben's braces. Lucy's summer program. The emergency roof repair. Your mother's in home aid for 4 months. Camille rolled her eyes. No one said you do nothing. That's exactly what you said. Nolan put his napkin beside his plate. Can we not turn dinner into one of your insecurity spirals? There it was. Not anger. Worse. A diagnosis. If I objected to humiliation, the humiliation became evidence that something was wrong with me. I stood. The auction coordinator needs me. Nolan's voice followed me. See? Soft stuff. A few people laughed because they did not know what else to do. I walked out of the ballroom before my face betrayed me. The event office was down a narrow hall behind the kitchen. I shut the door and pressed both palms to the desk. For 30 seconds, I let myself shake. Then my phone buzzed. It was a fraud alert from our bank. Home equity disbursement, $75,000. I read it 2 times. We did not have a home equity line. At least, I did not know we had one. I opened the banking app. The joint checking account showed nothing. The mortgage portal showed a new line of credit tied to our house. My name appeared beside Nolan's. Approved 9 days earlier. I downloaded the document. The signature looked like mine if someone had only seen my name on birthday cards. The G looped backward. I never looped it. The application said I had signed electronically at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. At 2:14 p.m. that Tuesday, I had been on a recorded Zoom presentation for 47 hospital board members. My stomach turned cold. A second document showed the disbursement destination. Vale & Finch Holdings LLC. Camille's company. I heard laughter in the hallway. Nolan's laughter. Then Camille's. I locked the office door. My work had taught me to document donor disputes, public relations crises, and contract conflicts before anyone started rewriting history. I sent the loan application, signature page, and disbursement notice to a private email address Nolan did not know I kept. Then I photographed the screen. A knock came at the door. Grace? Camille? I opened it. She leaned against the frame. Everyone's looking for you. I'm working. At a party. I'm fixing something. She glanced at the computer monitor. I had already closed the bank portal. You always need to look busy when important people are around. My hands were steady now. Do I? She smiled. It's not an insult. Nolan likes being needed. You should let him have that. What do you like? Her smile thinned. What? Being needed? For the first time, she looked unsure. Then Nolan appeared behind her. There you are. The chairman wants a picture. His hand landed at Camille's waist to move her aside. The touch was automatic. Familiar. She did not react. Neither did he. Something inside me became very quiet. I followed them back to the ballroom and stood beside my husband for a photograph. His arm went around me. He smiled into the camera. I smiled too. At 1:18 that morning, Nolan was asleep beside me when I carried my laptop into the laundry room and closed the door. I did not hack anything. I did not need to. He had left a shared tax folder synced to our family desktop because I handled school aid forms and annual insurance paperwork. Inside it was a new folder labeled 2026 Planning. There were projected asset statements, a draft marital agreement, and an email printout from an attorney I had never met. The proposed agreement said each spouse would retain property titled individually and assume responsibility for debt incurred in his or her own name. It also required each of us to certify that all material debts had been disclosed. Nolan had placed the house debt on a separate schedule under my name. My forged signature was doing more than borrowing money. It was being used to make the debt look like mine. I kept reading. An invoice from Vale and Finch referenced a residential concept package for Unit 1804 at the Solara, a luxury condominium tower under construction in Uptown Charlotte. A private text export had been saved as a PDF for Nolan's attorney. A single line from Camille appeared at the bottom. Once Grace signs, I want the walnut kitchen, not white. White looks cheap. Nolan's reply was beneath it. She'll sign. She still asks me before buying coffee. I sat on the laundry room floor. Not because I needed support. Because my knees had stopped working. The affair was not a suspicion anymore. It was a schedule, a floor plan, a financing strategy. There were reservation deposits from a Braddock project account, temporary transfers Nolan apparently intended to replace, and messages discussing how quickly I could be pressured into accepting the marital agreement. A single message made my breathing stop. Camille, if she fights, use the kids. Nolan, custody scares her more than money. I know what buttons work. I covered my mouth so I would not make a sound. Then I gave myself a rule. I could cry after I saved everything. For the next hour, I copied files to an encrypted cloud folder, printed key pages to a wireless printer in my office, and wrote a timeline. At 2:41, the laundry room door opened. Nolan stood there in pajama pants. What are you doing? The laptop screen was behind me. Lucy's uniform has paint on it. I'm soaking it before morning. He looked at the dark washing machine. Now? She needs it for the school program. His eyes moved to the laptop. Why is that in here? I was answering an email while I waited. He stepped closer. What email? I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the man who had forged my name was asking why I had privacy. A client. He held out his hand. Show me. No, the word surprised both of us. Nolan's face did not change, but the room did. What did you say? I said no. The file is confidential. I'm your husband. And it's my client. He stared at me for several seconds. Then he smiled. Fine. He leaned down and kissed the top of my head. Come back to bed when you're done. The softness frightened me more than shouting would have. I waited until his footsteps disappeared before I exhaled. The next morning, I called the only person in my family Nolan had never respected. My Aunt Evelyn. She lived outside Philadelphia in a narrow brick row house with faded shutters and a postage stamp backyard where she grew tomatoes in 5-gallon buckets. To Nolan, that made her poor. To me, it made her Evelyn. She was my mother's older sister and the only adult in my childhood who never treated achievement like a performance. When I left a corporate job after Ben was born, she mailed me a note that said, keep something that is yours, your name, your work, your savings, your judgment. Preferably all four. I had not followed the savings part. I had followed the judgment part too late. Her housekeeper answered. Grace? It was not Evelyn's voice. It was Marisol, who had helped her 2 times a week since her hip surgery. My fingers tightened around the phone. Is Aunt Evelyn there? A pause. Oh, Grace. I sat down. Evelyn had died in her sleep. She was 81. No hospital alarms. No emergency room. No final panic. Marisol had found her in the recliner beside the window, reading glasses folded on her chest and a library book open upside down on the carpet. I cried in the pantry so the children would not hear. Nolan found me there 10 minutes later. What happened? Evelyn died. He leaned against the doorframe. I'm sorry. For 1 second, I wanted to believe the sympathy. Then he asked, do you have to go up there? The attorney wants me in Philadelphia tomorrow. He sighed. Flights are insane right now. I can pay for my flight. With what? My business account. That's household money. I looked at him. He had transferred $75,000 from our house to his brother's wife. I had spent $38 on coffee. And somehow I was the dangerous one. I'm going. His eyes hardened. Don't turn grief into rebellion, Grace. I almost asked what rebellion meant. Instead, I packed a bag. The next afternoon, a car service met me at Philadelphia International Airport. I assumed the attorney had arranged it because Evelyn had hated driving in Center City. The driver took me past her neighborhood. Then farther. We stopped in front of a glass office building near Rittenhouse Square. I checked the address. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. On the 22nd floor, a woman named Miriam Shaw met me in a conference room. She was in her late 50s, with gray curls and the precise calm of someone who had no need to impress anyone. I represented your aunt for 19 years, she said. I didn't know she needed that much representation. Miriam smiled. Most people didn't. She slid a folder toward me. Evelyn lived simply because she liked living simply. It was not a financial necessity. The first number I saw was $24,612,884. I thought it was the value of a company. Then I saw the label. Liquid and marketable assets. I read the line again. Miriam turned the page. The Reed Property Trust owned 11 medical office buildings in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland, plus minority stakes in 3 redevelopment projects. The portfolio had grown from 2 small properties Evelyn and her late husband bought in the 1980s. After he died, she kept reinvesting. She never told me. She told almost no one. Why me? Miriam's expression softened. Because you called her every Sunday for 14 years. Because your children mailed her drawings. Because when her hip surgery kept her home for 6 weeks, you came 2 times and never asked what anything was worth. My throat closed. Miriam pushed a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a letter in Evelyn's blocky handwriting. Grace, money is only useful when it creates choices. Cruel people like to control choices because it lets them pretend they control worth. Do not confuse them. I chose you because you never loved me as an investment. Keep your judgment. It has always been more valuable than whatever I leave behind. Love, Evelyn. I read it 3 times. Then Miriam said, there is something else you need to understand. She showed me a property schedule. Reed Trust did not own our house. It did not own Nolan's company. What it owned was more complicated. Braddock Development had financed a regional office expansion through a commercial facility held by a lending partnership in which Reed Trust was the controlling investor. And Vale & Finch leased its showroom from a Reed-owned entity. Camille's company was 74 days behind on rent. I stared at the page. Miriam watched my face. Is there a problem? I opened my laptop. Yes, I said. But I don't want to use this money to create one. Then I showed her the problem that already existed. Miriam did not interrupt while I explained the forged home equity line, the transfer to Camille's company, the affair, and the draft agreement Nolan intended to make me sign. When I finished, she folded her hands. First, your inheritance can be kept separate if we handle it correctly. Second, your husband's conduct needs a North Carolina family law attorney, not an estate attorney. Third, do not confront him before we know exactly what he did. I don't want a rich person ambush. Good. Those usually make bad cases. I want the children protected. I want the debt corrected. And I want the truth documented before he can call me unstable. Miriam nodded. I know someone in Charlotte. By the time I returned home the next evening, I had spoken with Dana Ruiz, a family law attorney who had spent 17 years handling high-asset divorces and financial coercion cases. Dana's first instruction was simple. Stop trying to predict his next cruelty. Preserve evidence. Keep your routine. Don't sign anything without me. Nolan was waiting in the den when I walked in. A fire burned behind him even though the night was warm. On the coffee table sat the draft marital agreement I had already seen. He did not ask about Evelyn's funeral arrangements. He did not ask how I was doing. He pointed at the papers. We need to clean up our finances. I set down my bag. Why? Braddock is restructuring debt on several projects. It's smarter if we separate personal exposure. Is the company in trouble? No. This is ordinary planning. He spoke slowly, as though explaining whether to a child. The agreement says what's in my name stays mine, what's in your name stays yours, and neither of us is responsible for the other person's individual debt. I want an attorney to review it. His eyes lifted. What attorney? A lawyer was recommended to me. By your aunt's people? There was too much interest in the question. By someone I trust. Nolan leaned back. Grace, you're turning a routine document into a drama. If it's routine, independent review should not matter. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he smiled. Fine. You have until Thursday. Upstairs, I locked the bedroom door and sent the agreement to Dana. She called before breakfast. He gave you a trap, she said. But he was greedy enough to make the trap symmetrical. The agreement required sworn disclosure of all debts over $10,000, all transfers between marital assets and related companies, and any outside financial interest that could affect the marriage. Nolan had disclosed none of the home equity line, none of the transfers to Vale and Finch, and none of the temporary withdrawals from Braddock accounts. Dana revised the language so undisclosed debt created by a spouse without the other's authorization remained attributable to the spouse who incurred it, subject to court review. She also clarified that inheritances and gifts remained separate unless intentionally commingled. Will he accept that? I asked. If his attorney reads it carefully, maybe not. What if Nolan pressures him? Then we learned something. Nolan came home late Wednesday and dropped the revised agreement on the kitchen island. Your lawyer likes extra words. Did your lawyer approve them? He said they were acceptable. That was not what I had asked. Did you disclose every debt? His mouth tightened. Yes. Every transfer? Yes. Then sign. He looked at me as if he had expected fear and found insolence instead. A mobile notary arrived the next morning. Nolan signed before I did. He barely skimmed the pages. I signed with the fountain pen Evelyn had given me when I graduated college. Nolan noticed. Is that the inheritance? A pen? Did she leave you anything else? I capped it. She left me choices. He laughed. That sounds like her. Always dramatic about nothing. The notary looked down at her stamp. I did not answer. For the next 8 days, Nolan became almost cheerful. He thought the agreement had protected him. He stopped hiding Camille's messages as carefully. He stayed out later. He began discussing apartment leases with me in hypothetical terms. What would you do if we had to live separately for a while? Depends why. Just theoretically. I don't make major decisions theoretically. He smiled. You always make simple things complicated. Meanwhile, Dana's forensic accountant, Ravi Patel, was reconstructing the money flow. The $75,000 home equity draw had gone to Vale and Finch. But the story did not begin there. 3 weeks earlier, Nolan had temporarily moved $48,000 from a Braddock Project escrow account into an entity controlled by Camille so she would not lose a deposit on a penthouse at the Solara. When compliance questioned the shortfall, he replaced the money using the proceeds from the forged home equity line. He had treated our house like a bridge loan. My signature was the bridge. Ravi found another detail. Vale and Finch had submitted an invoice to Braddock for consulting and staging services on a project where no such services had been authorized. The amount was $31,500. Camille had been paid. Nolan had approved it. Is that criminal? I asked Dana. Possibly. That's not my determination. But it is absolutely something Braddock's internal investigators will care about. Do we send it? We send only records your team lawfully obtained and let them investigate their own systems. I stared at the timeline on her conference room screen. The affair hurt. The money frightened me. But what angered me most was how carefully Nolan had built a story in which I was irresponsible enough to blame. He had not only planned to leave me. He had planned to leave me holding evidence of his choices. The following Saturday, Ben had a soccer tournament. Nolan promised to come. He did not. At halftime, Ben scanned the sideline and asked, "Did Dad text?" I checked my phone. No, he said he'd be here. I know. Ben kicked at the grass. He always comes when Coach Parker is around. The observation was so precise that it hurt. Nolan liked fatherhood with an audience. I crouched beside Ben. Play for your team, not for who's watching. He nodded, but his face stayed tight. After the game, Lucy asked if we could get ice cream. My household card declined at the counter. I tried again. Declined. I checked the app. Nolan had reduced the limit to $100. There was $12.43 available. Ben saw the screen. Did we run out of money? No, Dad says cards stop working when people overspend. I closed my eyes for 0.5 seconds. Nolan had turned financial control into a lesson the children were learning about me. I paid with my business debit card. That night, after they were asleep, I walked into Nolan's office. He was watching a football game with his laptop open. You reduced the household card. You exceeded the weekly budget. On groceries and Lucy's school shoes. Then invoice your clients faster. Ben thinks our cards fail because I overspend. Nolan muted the television. Maybe he should understand that money has consequences. He's 10. He's old enough to understand responsibility. Whose responsibility is the home equity loan? His face went still. I had not planned to say it. The words simply arrived. What loan? I watched him lie. The lie was clean. Fast. Practiced. The loan with my signature on it. He stood. You've been going through my files. It's our house. You don't understand the structure. Then explain it. It was a temporary liquidity decision. With my forged signature? His jaw flexed. Be careful with that word. Why? Because accusing your husband of fraud while you're emotionally unstable after a death can have consequences. There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. I stepped backward. Not because I was afraid of him hitting me. Nolan had never hit me. He preferred tools that did not leave bruises. Money. Children. Credibility. Access. I'm going to bed, I said. He followed me into the hallway. Grace. I turned. You are not equipped to fight me. His voice was almost gentle. If this marriage becomes adversarial, you need to think about custody. Stable income. Housing. Decision-making. Courts look at patterns. So do accountants. For the first time, fear crossed his face. Then it vanished. I went upstairs. At 1:06 a.m., someone tried to reset the password to my business email. At 1:09, my phone received a request to approve a new login. At 1:13, Nolan knocked on the guest room door. Why did you change the Wi-Fi password? I didn't. Open the door. No, silence. Then the knob turned. I had locked it. Grace, don't be ridiculous. I did not answer. After a minute, he walked away. The next morning, Dana told me to create a safety plan. Not because she predicted violence. Because escalation was escalation. I moved copies of birth certificates, medications, school records, and several days of clothes to my friend Tasha's house. Miriam arranged a separate phone under the trust security protocols. I told the children nothing yet. I wanted facts before fear. Camille made that impossible. She cornered me outside Lucy's elementary school on Tuesday afternoon. She was leaning against her black Mercedes SUV in a red coat, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. Can we talk? We are talking. She took off the glasses. Nolan says you've been making accusations. Does Ethan know what kind? Her expression changed. Leave my husband out of this. I almost admired the sentence. You're sleeping with his brother. Keep your voice down. Parents passed us carrying backpacks and umbrellas. You chose a school parking lot. She stepped closer. Nolan is trying to make this civilized. You're forcing him to protect himself. By forging my signature? A tiny movement in her face. Not surprise. Recognition. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then you shouldn't be worried. She folded her arms. Grace, you need to be realistic. Nolan can provide the kids with the life they're used to. You work from a laptop. I work. You know what I mean. Yes. I do. She lowered her voice. If you embarrass him at Braddock or drag Ethan into this, Nolan will go for primary custody. He already has documentation of your spending problems and emotional instability. For 1 second, the parking lot seemed to tilt. Not because I believed her. Because she had just confirmed the plan. I had started recording before I left my car. North Carolina allows a participant to record a conversation she is part of. Dana had made sure I understood that. Camille kept talking. You could leave with a settlement, a decent apartment, and regular time with the kids. Or you can fight people who know how the system works. People? Her mouth tightened. You know what I mean. I want to hear you say it. She realized too late. Don't be stupid. Tell Ethan I said hello. I walked away. My hands were shaking when I reached the car. I sent the recording to Dana. She called 5 minutes later. That matters. Because she threatened custody? Because she linked the threat to your silence about Nolan and Ethan. It supports a pattern. It is not magic evidence. But it matters. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. I hate that every conversation feels like evidence now. That's because you're living with someone who plans to rewrite them. 2 days later, Braddock's compliance department contacted Nolan. I knew because he came home at 3 p.m. for the first time in months. He found me in the pantry labeling school snacks. Did you contact my company? I kept writing Ben on a paper bag. Why? Answer me. Did they contact you? His face flushed. You sent private marital documents to my employer. I didn't send private marital documents. Then who did? I looked at him. I don't know what they have. It was true. Dana's team had provided a narrow packet through counsel. Braddock's investigators had access to records we did not. Nolan stepped closer. You think this is a game? No, you destroy my income, you destroy the children's stability. You borrowed against their home. I fixed it. You replaced an unauthorized transfer with another. His pupils widened. That detail told him I knew more than he thought. Who are you talking to? My attorney. What attorney? The one you said I couldn't afford. He laughed once. You had a dead end in a row house. Don't play wealthy widow with me. I put down the marker. Why do you care what she left? Because spouses disclose assets. Like debts? The room went silent. Nolan's phone rang. He looked at the screen and rejected the call. It rang again. He turned it face down. "Dinner tonight," he said. "What? Just us? We need to talk without lawyers and accusations." "I have work." "Cancel it." "No," his face hardened, then softened. "Please." The word felt more manipulative than an order. I went. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Because I wanted to see what he did when charm became his remaining tool. He took me to the restaurant where we had celebrated our 5th anniversary. He ordered the wine I used to like. He asked about Ben's tournament. He told me I looked beautiful. For 20 minutes, he became the Nolan I had married, the man who once drove 40 minutes at midnight because I had left my laptop charger at a hotel, the man who held my father's hand in hospice, the man who used to ask what I thought before deciding anything important. Grief for that version of him surprised me. Then his phone lit on the table. "Camille, compliance asked about the invoice. Call me now." Nolan flipped the phone over. "What did Evelyn leave you?" There it was. I set down my glass. "Why do you keep asking?" "Because you came back different." "She died. People change when people die." "Did she leave property?" "Why?" "Because if you have an asset, it should be disclosed. The agreement says inheritances are separate." His face tightened. "You memorized it?" "My lawyer explained it." He leaned forward. "Grace, whoever is advising you is filling your head with fantasies. If Braddock fires me because of some misunderstanding, you will regret it. You cannot maintain the house, the school, the clubs, the life the kids know. Are you worried about losing your job?" "No," his answer came too quickly. "Then why are we talking about it?" Nolan looked past me toward the bar. "Because I'm trying to save this family." "Which part?" "What does that mean?" "You tell me." He stared at me. The charm vanished. By dessert, we were two strangers sitting under soft lighting. "On the drive home," he said, "Camille thinks you threatened her." "Camille threatened me." "She said you brought up Ethan." "Her husband?" "Don't play games." "I didn't marry him." "She did." Nolan gripped the wheel. "Ethan doesn't need to be dragged into this until we decide what happens." "We?" "You and me." "You and Camille?" The car drifted slightly before he corrected it. "Nothing happened with Camille." I laughed. He turned toward me. "Careful." "No. I'm done being careful enough for both of us." At a red light, I looked directly at him. "If Ethan learns the truth, it will be because you and his wife created it." The light changed. Nolan did not move until the car behind us honked. That night, he changed the code to the home security system. I discovered it the next afternoon when I returned from picking up Lucy. My app would not open the gate. Ben was at practice with a friend. Lucy sat in the back seat holding a library book. "Why can't we go home?" "Technical problem." I called Nolan. "Send me the code." "I'm in a meeting." "You changed it." "The system reset." "Send me the code." I said I'm in a meeting. "My 7-year-old is in the car." "Then wait." He hung up. I sat there looking at the gate to the house where my name was on the deed. 23 minutes later, he texted 6 digits. Below them, "Life is easier when you stop fighting every little thing." I forwarded the message to Dana. She called immediately. "Move the timeline up." "For leaving?" "For safety. You and the kids can leave voluntarily without surrendering your legal rights to the house. We'll document why." I watched Lucy draw a heart in the fog on the window. "When?" "Before the weekend if you can." Friday afternoon, an invitation arrived for Ethan's 46th birthday dinner. Camille had written a note on the back. "Wear something modest. We don't need another scene about money." I stared at the handwriting. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because Nolan and Camille still believed humiliation was their strongest weapon. They had not noticed it had stopped working. Ethan's birthday dinner was held in the private room of a steakhouse near South Park. I almost did not go. Dana did not need me to. Miriam did not want the trust involved in anything theatrical. But Ethan was still my children's uncle, and he was still a man sitting inside a lie everyone else had decided he did not deserve to know. I had prepared an evidence packet for him through counsel. It was scheduled for delivery Monday morning. I did not want his birthday turned into public punishment. So I went for dinner and kept the truth in my handbag. Nolan wore the blue suit he saved for board meetings. Camille wore emerald silk. Ethan looked happy. That was the hardest part. He hugged Nolan, kissed Camille, and thanked me for bringing a framed photograph of their father from an old fishing trip. During the first course, Nolan announced he had a gift. A waiter carried in a long box. Inside was a vintage guitar Ethan had talked about wanting since college. He stared at it. "Nolan, this is ridiculous. You only turn 46 once." Ethan laughed and hugged him. Across the table, Camille touched Nolan's wrist. It lasted less than 1 second. I saw it. So did my mother-in-law. Her eyes moved from their hands to me. Then away. Silence could become a family tradition if enough people practiced. Camille waited until dessert to begin. I have news. She placed a glossy brochure on the table. The Solara accepted my final design changes. Closing is next week. Ethan blinked. Closing on what? For the first time all evening, Camille looked genuinely caught. My investment unit. You bought a condo? It's for the business. With what money? Nolan reached for his wine. Camille recovered. It's complicated. Ethan looked at her. We share tax returns. Before Camille could answer, Nolan raised his glass. To bold moves. I could not stop myself. Bold moves usually have clean paper trails. Nolan's eyes snapped toward me. Camille smiled too brightly. Grace has become very interested in finance lately. I've always been interested. People just preferred me quiet. The room changed. Ethan looked from one of us to the other. What am I missing? Nothing, Nolan said. Camille leaned back. Grace is upset about her marriage and wants everyone else upset too. I looked at Ethan. You're getting something Monday. Read it somewhere private. Nolan set down his glass. No, Ethan frowned. No what? Nolan stood. Grace and I need a minute. He gripped my elbow. I pulled away before he could steer me. Don't touch me. Conversation stopped around the table. His mother whispered his name. Nolan smiled at everyone. Excuse us. I walked into the corridor because I wanted distance from Ethan's birthday, not because Nolan ordered me. He followed. The moment the door closed behind him, his face changed. What did you send Ethan? Something he has a right to see. You are going to destroy this family. No. I'm going to stop protecting the people who did. You don't know what you think you know. I know Camille's company received $75,000 from a loan carrying my forged signature. His face hardened. You authorized home improvements last year. Not that loan. You'll never prove that. I was speaking to 47 hospital board members when the document says I signed it. A muscle moved in his jaw. You think timestamps win divorces? I think facts matter. You think because some aunt left you a modest inheritance you can hire lawyers and challenge me? I stared at him. He still did not know. That surprised me more than it should have. He had spent so many years deciding what I was worth that evidence no longer interested him. You should go back inside, I said. You will tell Ethan you overreacted. No, you will tell Braddock this is a marital misunderstanding. No, he stepped close. If you force this, I will file for primary custody Monday. You already plan to. His face went blank. Then I watched him understand that Camille had told me too much. That's not what I meant. You called it leverage. I never said that. Maybe you should ask Camille what she says in school parking lots. His eyes changed. That was the midpoint between suspicion and fear. You recorded her? I said maybe. The private room door opened. Ethan stood there. Is there something I need to know? Nolan turned. No, I said, yes. Camille appeared behind Ethan. Her face drained of color. I took the sealed copy from my handbag and handed it to Ethan. I was going to let the courier deliver this Monday. I'm sorry your birthday became part of it. Nolan reached for the envelope. Ethan pulled it back. What is this? Read it at home. Camille spoke quickly. She's trying to poison you against me. Ethan looked at her. Then reading it shouldn't be dangerous. No one spoke. I picked up my coat and left. By the time I reached the parking lot, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From the finality of what I had done. Truth, once handed to someone, could not be recalled. Saturday morning, I moved Ben and Lucy to a furnished apartment the trust already used for visiting managers near their school. I did not tell Nolan the address. Dana notified his attorney that the children were safe, attending school, and available for reasonable contact through counsel while temporary custody arrangements were discussed. I told the children the truth in language they could carry. Your dad and I are going to live separately. Lucy's eyes filled. Because we were loud? No, because Ben spends too much on soccer? Ben looked horrified. No, I said. Nothing about this is because of either of you. Ben stared at the carpet. Are we losing the house? I sat beside him. No. And even if we choose another house someday, you are not losing your home. Home is the people responsible for keeping you safe. What did Dad do? Adult things that adults are handling. Is he bad? I took a breath. People can make bad choices without children having to decide whether they are bad people. You are allowed to love your dad and be angry or confused. That answer cost me something. It would have been easier to make Nolan a villain simple enough for children to hate. But they were not jurors. They were his children. Sunday passed quietly. Monday did not. At 9:12 a.m., Dana filed for temporary financial restraints preventing either of us from transferring, refinancing, or encumbering the house until the disputed loan was reviewed. At 10:40, Braddock suspended Nolan pending completion of its internal investigation. At 11:15, Ethan filed for legal separation from Camille. And at 12:03, I received a text from Nolan. Be at the house at 4. We finish this today. Dana told me not to go alone. At 3:58, I arrived with Dana and Ravi. Miriam joined by video from Philadelphia. A process server waited in a car across the street. Nolan stood in the driveway. Camille was there too. So was a moving truck. For me. 2 workers had already carried boxes onto the lawn. The labels were written in Nolan's handwriting. Grace, clothes. Grace, office. Kids, toys. My wedding photographs had been placed face down on top of a box. Camille stood by the garage with a set of keys. Perfect timing, she said. Nolan held the settlement agreement from the mudroom. Sign, take the boxes, and we can avoid making this uglier. Dana walked beside me. Nolan looked at her, then at Ravi. Who are they? My lawyer and forensic accountant. Camille laughed. With what money? I looked at her. That question has caused both of you a lot of trouble. Nolan's phone buzzed. He ignored it. Dana handed him the court order. You are restrained from excluding Grace from the marital residence or transferring any interest in the property pending hearing. He scanned the first page. This is my house. It is titled jointly, Dana said. The agreement says, the agreement also contains your sworn representation that you disclosed all material debt and related party transfers. Camille stepped backward. Nolan pointed at me. She knew about the loan. No, I said. You signed it. No, you told me to handle the financing. No, his voice rose. Stop saying no like that changes reality. Ravi opened a document case. It changes quite a bit when the authentication record shows the signature request originated from your office device while Grace was on a recorded video conference in another city. Nolan looked at him. Who are you? The accountant your wife can afford. Nolan's phone buzzed again. This time he looked. His face changed. What? Camille asked. He read the email silently. Then another notification arrived. And another. Braddock had terminated him for cause. The internal investigation had found the temporary transfer from Project Escrow, the unauthorized Vale and Finch invoice, and false certification Nolan submitted after replacing the money. He looked at me. You did this. No. I reported records. Your company investigated your conduct. I put the money back. Ravi's voice stayed neutral. Replacing an unauthorized transfer does not make the original transfer authorized. Camille grabbed Nolan's arm. What about the Solara? He did not answer. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Vale and Finch's landlord. She answered. Yes? She listened. What do you mean default remedies? Her eyes moved to me. No. We're curing the balance Friday. Another pause. You cannot lock me out. I have client samples in that building. I said, your lease has a cure period. Your attorney can discuss it with management. Camille lowered the phone. How do you know my lease? Miriam's face appeared on Dana's tablet. Because the Reed Property Trust owns the building. Camille stared at the screen. Then at me. Nolan's mouth opened. I continued. Aunt Evelyn left me control of the trust. How much? He whispered. I almost laughed at the question. Even then, he needed a number. Enough that it never mattered when you called my work little. How much? $24.6 million in liquid assets, plus the property portfolio. Camille sat down on one of my moving boxes. Nolan looked toward Braddock's office campus in the distance, as if he could somehow see it from our street. The trust controls the lending partnership that financed Braddock's office expansion. His expression shifted. You knew. Not until Philadelphia. And you let me sign the marital agreement. You insisted on it. You trapped me. I asked if you disclosed every debt. You said yes. He looked at Dana. This is coercion. Dana did not blink. You were represented by counsel. Camille stood. You used your inheritance to destroy my company. No. Your company was 74 days behind on rent before I knew Evelyn owned the building. Management followed the lease. I asked them to treat you exactly like every other tenant. Her face twisted. Because you hate me. I do not need to like you for your rent to be due. A car door slammed behind us. Ethan walked up the driveway. He looked exhausted. He was holding the envelope I had given him. Camille's face changed. Ethan. He stopped several feet away. 2 years. She looked at Nolan. Nolan looked away. Ethan, it's complicated. No, it isn't. His voice broke. You slept with my wife for 2 years. Nolan stepped forward. I never meant for. Ethan held up a hand. Don't. Then he looked at Camille. You used our business line to cover expenses for that condo. It was temporary. You told me the money was for a showroom expansion. I was going to replace it. With what? She said nothing. Ethan laughed once, bitterly. That's the whole thing, isn't it? Every lie was temporary because someone else was always supposed to pay for it. Camille began to cry. You were never there for me. I was married to you. You were satisfied with ordinary. Ethan flinched. Then he nodded. Maybe I was. He looked at Nolan. I was also your brother. Nolan's shoulders dropped. We can fix this. No, the word sounded different from Ethan than it had from me. Quiet. Finished. I gave my lawyer everything, Ethan said. The messages. The business statements. The hotel charges. I'm not covering for either of you. Camille reached for him. He stepped away. Nolan turned back to me. Grace, think about Ben and Lucy. I had been waiting for that. You should have. If this becomes criminal, you should have. They need their father. They need a father who does not use them as leverage. His face crumpled for 1 second. I was angry. You wrote it into a plan. I didn't mean I would take them. You meant I should believe you could. He looked at the moving boxes. Then at the court order. Then at me. What do you want? For years, I had wanted him to admit I mattered. Then I wanted him to be sorry. Standing in the driveway, I understood I no longer needed either thing. An honest divorce. A fair custody plan based on the children, not money. Every unauthorized dollar accounted for. And no one lying for you. If I cooperate, will you tell Braddock I approved the transfers for a family investment? No, will you say the signature was yours? No, then you want me ruined. I want to stop participating in the story where protecting you requires me to disappear. Behind him, Camille started blaming Nolan for the condo. Nolan blamed her for pressuring him. Their romance lasted exactly as long as the fantasy that someone else would absorb the consequences. I looked at Dana. I'm not going inside. You don't have to. I turned toward my car. Nolan called after me. Grace. I stopped. You'd have nothing without your aunt. The old sentence found its final form. Not you need me. Not you don't understand money. Just an attempt to make my freedom belong to someone else. I faced him. Evelyn gave me options. She did not give me the judgment to use them. Then I left. The consequences took most of a year. Braddock referred its findings to authorities and its insurers. Nolan eventually pleaded guilty to offenses connected to the unauthorized project transfer and falsified financial records. He received a custodial sentence, restitution, and a ban from holding financial authority over investor escrow. The forged home equity debt was unwound through the divorce proceedings and a settlement with the lender. Camille lost the Solara unit when she could not complete the closing. Vale and Finch survived, but the unpaid rent and disputed invoice damaged it badly. Ethan divorced her and stopped protecting either her or Nolan from consequences. Nolan saw the children under a structured plan before sentencing and later through supervised calls arranged with their therapist. I never told Ben and Lucy they had to forgive him or reject him. I told them trust was something adults rebuild with behavior. Ben stopped asking whether soccer fees would make us lose a house. Lucy stopped hiding snacks in her backpack, in case money ran out. Those were the consequences I cared about most. I sold our house after the divorce. The children and I bought a smaller place 12 minutes from their school, with a maple tree in the front yard and a kitchen table big enough for homework and Lucy's endless craft projects. I kept working. The Reed Trust already had managers who understood real estate better than I did. I studied, asked questions, and kept several nonprofit clients because the work reminded me that competence existed in my life long before anyone attached millions of dollars to my name. On the first anniversary of Evelyn's death, we visited her row house in Philadelphia. Lucy found an index card tucked inside a cookbook. Use what you have. Keep what you are. Ben read it 2 times. Was she talking about money? Maybe, I said. But I think she was talking about choices. People sometimes say the inheritance saved me. Money paid for excellent lawyers, gave me housing options, and removed one of Nolan's strongest threats. But money did not make me say no in the laundry room. It did not record Camille in the parking lot. It did not make Ethan open an envelope. Those were choices. For 8 years, Nolan treated my dependence as proof that I was small. Evelyn's gift did not make me larger. It gave me enough room to see that his measurement had been wrong. A year after the moving truck sat in my driveway, I changed the code on the front door of our new house. Ben watched me type the numbers. Who gets the code? You, Lucy, and me. No one can lock us out? I looked at the maple leaves moving in the evening light. No, I said. Not from this home. For the first time in years, the sound of a lock clicking made me feel safe instead of trapped.